Welcome to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and this is the YouTube version of our podcast. To get the audio version, you can hop on over to Spotify or anywhere that you consume audio podcasts. We are going to jump into some really cool content, so stay tuned for our next guest. We look forward to connecting with you, and be sure to subscribe. And to start your author adventure, hop on over to o'learypublishing.com, where you can map out the entire process and see what writing a book would look like for you. Let's get started.
I'm April O'Leary, host of the I'm Booked podcast, and I'm here with Anne Meese, who has generously offered to donate her time to me today, which is more valuable than anything. And we're here to talk about our new book, Sober Moms, Happy Moms. And Anne is the contributor to the poem Mother Grief at the very beginning of the book. She and I met in recovery. And coincidentally, as we were getting towards the end of the publication and getting ready to launch the book, she emailed me this poem sort of out of the blue. And my youngest daughter, Amy, had just had knee surgery. And I opened my email on my phone and I read it as she was sleeping, with her head on my shoulder. And I just broke down into tears. And I said, this is one of the most beautiful poems I've ever read. And this poem needs to be read by mothers all over the world. And so would you allow me to publish the poem in the book? And she said, yes. So I want to start the podcast by thanking Anne for letting us share her poem. And I want her to read the poem for you. And then we'll get into a little bit about recovery and being moms in recovery and some of the stories and things that have come about because of this book already. So thank you for being here with me today, Anne.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to have my poem in the book. Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be able to read it today. Mother Grief. I hear it in the voices of mothers I come across, in the circles I inhabit, in churches, online, in the store, on the street, wherever it may be. I hear the tone of disregard, of minimizing or ignoring their child. And I want to say, you'll regret that someday. Someday you will miss that child beyond measure. You will grieve for the chances to love them again when they were small. You'll have so much love for them and nowhere to put it, and you'll cry the most bitter tears, surprising yourself with those tears. That is, if you can, the ball of them feeling so tight in your chest sometimes that it can't break apart. Held up in that place of the heart that has its own entrance with no discernible exit. Your children will age, and the chance to do things differently will be gone, and you'll notice too late, never knowing what to do with the images and the messages that the terrorist within you remind you of. You should have stopped whatever the hell you were doing and listened to him, played the puzzle with him, sat with him for a while before bed. He asked you to. He asked. I never knew what to do with such regret and pain until the universe told me what to do one day to express it, to push it out of myself in song or in writing, like this poem, maybe a painting, to see what will become of it. And I did. And I felt free for the first time. And I continued. And I came to understand from the depths of my soul that I must connect it to the universe of mothers in history and beyond, before recorded time even. I needed to connect it to the other forever loves lost that float on a cloud, coming in steady from the west, circling the earth, picking up the swirling, churning pain of all mothers in their songs, their writings, their paintings, holding the pain until ready for a rain release in full, a steady warm rain that lifts the leaves of the tree of knowledge and washes away all sin and sorrow, the fresh air opening a mother's heart, soothing her soul like a balm, like the one that surely soothed the mother in Gilead, awakening her mother wisdom to ease her sad self that day, that moment, now. To learn anew that the winds of sorrow will build again, and again the clouds will come, catching the misery that some have carried too long, their hearts broken with troubles unbearable, finally ready to be offered up, hands up, on their knees. The cloudy mist will grab it, moving on to the next county, passing overhead smooth on a breeze, ready for the next batch of misunderstood and confusing mother grief to rise up, readying her once more to be washed clean, calming her, the mother, the hero, angel, protector, warrior, fighter, lover, surprisingly stronger, ready for another chance, forgiving, healing, returning her to her own mother wisdom, knowing she is not alone.
Beautiful. Gets me every time.
Thank you.
Especially she is not alone. I think that's part of recovery, the part of it that I am so grateful for, knowing that we're not alone. And so that's in this book, the Sober Mom, Happy Mom book, there's a lot of shame around being a mom in alcoholism. There's a lot of shame about things that have happened in our homes or behind closed doors or with our kids, things we wish we wouldn't have said or things we wish we wouldn't have done, dangerous situations we put our kids in, times we weren't available for them. And yet when you step into the world of recovery and you understand that one day at a time, you can find healing, you can find restoration. There is hope inside of the rooms of recovery. There is a new camaraderie and a new spirit of friendship that blossoms. And so that's really what this book has, I hope, built in it with the 12 stories that we shared. We put together this book that has 12 different stories from different perspectives, different moms who were at different ages and different stages in their own motherhood, and different ways that their disease of alcoholism progressed, and different ways that they chose to get sober or things that happened along their sobriety journeys. And, Anne has shared her story in this book, and I've shared mine, and there are others. And so if you're someone who's listening to this right now and you have questioned your drinking, or you've wondered, am I drinking too much? Or you have a friend that you think maybe is drinking too much, we encourage you to pick the book up. But today we wanted to come to you as two friends in recovery, but also as people who have done a bit of digging in our own psyche. And, Anne has worked in the professional field of addiction recovery. And we wanted to talk a bit about the disease of alcoholism.
Yes, we did.
We did. We had a very rich conversation before we pressed record. And I said, we should have just been recording this the whole time.
It's true.
So
but we always do that.
We always do that. And so, we wanted to talk about the things that not only collateral damage that mothers do in alcoholism, but the ways we can heal and restore it. And there are paths to healing and wholeness, I believe. And so how did you get into the work of addiction recovery?
Well, I was in recovery about 6 years when I decided to go back to school, get my master's. And my first motivations, drives were to help people. That's what I would have told you. Mm-hmm. But really, what I wanted to do is fix people.
Okay.
My family, unfortunately, included. And I went to school, finished, got the degree, got the license, got the job. And in about 2 weeks, was about to burn out. Even after internships, I did the whole thing. And I just had the most amazing, wise, experienced people that went before me that would guide me along the way and say, you know what, you're going to have to change your attitude here. You're not doing this work. There is a higher power. There's a spirit here that is going to work in their lives that you don't get to pick when that is. You're just guiding them. You're like the bumpers in the bowling alley. Mm-hmm. On the side they put for little kids, and you're just going to guide them back in. I never forgot that. The relief of that I'm just providing information, which is really what a lot of people mostly want at first is education. I worked in different treatment settings, different levels of care, and consistently in patient client reviews of what they got, what they appreciated the most was education. People didn't, they don't know about this that much. So once I got my mind around how I could do this successfully and not lose myself, I was in. I loved it.
And so when we talk about education, and it's true, when I was out there drinking, binge drinking too much, I didn't have any education about what alcoholism was, what the red flags were, why certain patterns were repeating. It wasn't that I was ignoring information I had, it was that I didn't have the information. So what are some of the typical things that in your experience people don't know that you educate them on, sort of coming in the front end of, am I an alcoholic or am I drinking too much? What are some of those?
I think people tend to, I'm in recovery. I had a lot of these things as well, so I identified. But I think one of the main things is that they think that I wasn't using then. I wasn't drunk then, when really it's a progressive disease that progresses like this. It's not like it's rare that it would be, had my first drink at 12 years old and, I was off to the races. It happens. But for a lot of people, especially women, there's a whole bunch of other things involved that can make that progression odd and strange and not even and confusing. So to get the idea that no, this is a thinking disorder. This is there's an emotional component to this that makes people want to escape their feelings. Alcohol and drugs work really well for that. They work really well for that. There's a big lie because you cannot stop time and you can't change that way. So that's why so many people feel behind the 8 ball when they first get clean and sober, because they feel like they have to go catch up because they were living such a different, weird existence. That's a big one to say, well, you may have been sober at that moment, but a lot of times when you do a timeline with someone, they didn't drink that day or they didn't use that day because they were hungover. Or people that try to control it are really just controlling the symptoms of detox with food or shopping or sex or gambling, you name it, other drugs for sure, besides alcohol. And then that's the big one. And the education too around that this is chronic. It doesn't go away. There's it's not very, it's just an old saying. It says once you become a pickle, you can't go back to being a cucumber. Your body really does change. We really are a little different as alcoholics and addicts. I heard someone describe it once as if our nerves are on the outside of our skin. We're really sensitive people. Really, feelings get hurt easily. We chew on things for a long time. We think that we have to have everything figured out before we ask for help. We get on a course of action and that's the way it's going to be. Get out of my way, back off, we're going this way. There's the low self-esteem that goes with it. And
I'm plugging my ears right now, by the way, for those of you who are listening, because I don't want to hear all this about myself.
Those were hard things I had to learn. Thankfully, I had people to say, Anne, come here for a sec here. And defenses, all those things that really kind of go with it.
And why, before when we were talking about trauma, so in my family dynamic growing up, I can't point back to necessarily my parents weren't alcoholic, and I can't say that there was any sort of major trauma. And I know that's an experience. I've heard others in the rooms that didn't have any alcoholics in their family. Somehow maybe it was genetic, skipped a generation, I don't know. But then there's others who really, on top of the alcoholism, they have childhood trauma as well. And so that's a whole nother component to healing and progressing through their own disease. So let's talk about that for a moment, about the trauma associated with growing up with an alcoholic parent, let's say.
Sure. Trauma, the way I like to describe it is that there are little T traumas and there's big T traumas. And little T traumas accumulated over time that people learn how to, especially little kids, learn how to react to survive. still build. I mean, they really still, they get caught in your amygdala in the back of your brain. There are neurotransmitters that lock them up,
Mm-hmm.
and they still build over time. There are big T traumas, like there are incidents or things like that. So match all that together with what could happen in the life and the chaos of a home where there's active use. And the energy in the home is going to that person who is identified as the addict. um, there isn't much energy for a little kid to get help in the home, and they're certainly living under rules. Don't talk about it. Don't trust anybody outside this family, and don't feel. Your feelings are just not important.
Mm.
So the connection between, and I think why recovery rooms are so amazing, is the connection between a person that may have that
Mm-hmm.
kind of childhood experience and the person who does not have that, is that they both want to change how they feel.
Mm.
They're both really sensitive people. There's something about being really sensitive. We're just made a little different, really creative, very smart, very beautiful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't feel so bad.
And that's why people still go to meetings, because they're very, it's really sort of ingrained. How do I change these feelings right now? Even when things are good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know something bad's coming. There's all those dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have a punch in your life with a big T or a little T, but it's really, how alcoholism, drug addiction come, any kind of addiction can be to have something you can control.
Mm.
That is the lie, because you really can't. It controls you over time.
Mm-hmm.
But something that you feel like you can control, that will help you handle these emotions
Mm-hmm.
that really get out of whack, so that when people get sober, clean, when they have all these emotions, that's when they say people are really like, when did your disease really take over? About when I was 15. You're about 15 years old emotionally. Never went on a date sober, never had a relationship sober. It is a lot of work. The beauty of it,
Mm-hmm.
of recovery, is that you're just still going to do it one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to get that across, because it feels like it's so much. In fact, when you finally get a picture after the fog clears, and you get a picture, if you're working, a program that guides you through your past, making peace with it, and how to make amends and moving forward. If you're doing that stuff, it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. But you're still just going to do it one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's like there's a mountain, only got a spoon.
Yeah.
You're just getting one bit at a time, and you're going to have help with you along the way. So
it's good. Well, and I think that the one day at a time concept for anything, it's like if you're looking in the mirror and you have 100 pounds to lose, if you, as long as you eat the next meal with some good choices, and then the next meal after that, and then the next meal after that, over time will take care of where you're heading. You don't have to, there's no way it's coming off in a day. It didn't come on in a day. So I think, that's where, when we've been active in our alcoholism for years, possibly, or been checked out of relationships for years, and all of a sudden you put the drink down and you're almost like, what do I do next? Right. How do I interact with life now? And it's funny, because I can remember in my own, alcoholism, or at some point, and I think being an overly sensitive person, it's hard to live when you're feeling everything. And so at some point, and I can't pinpoint when that was or why, but I was able to sort of shut my emotions off. And I remember in college becoming very sarcastic and very unfeeling, uncaring. And I remember my sister, she and I went to the same college, and she said, "You're just mean," because everything was a joke, but it was a mean joke, and I had no ability to even, I was just like, ugh, why are you so sensitive? Why are you being so sensitive about that? And so it was very hard to even understand other people's feelings of, why would they be upset? Why are they crying? And then prior to getting sober, I remember doing a short stint in therapy for some relationship issues. And I realized that when I lost my dad, when I was about 21, at that point, I really shut my emotions off. And I realized I hadn't cried in 10 years.
Mm.
And, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
it's pretty unhealthy. Would you say? I mean, it was like when you'd see somebody cry, it was like, what are we crying about?
Mhm.
Why are we crying? So, but alcohol worked to numb out feelings,
Mhm.
give me the relief from stress, anxiety, a lot of, responsibility as an at-home mom. My kids were all young. And when I could escape and drink, it was like I felt like I could be myself again.
Mhm.
So, so it worked. There's a saying in recovery, it works till it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, if it didn't work the first time, we probably wouldn't do it again, but it gave us something where we wanted it again, the feeling. Even if you, threw up on the first time you drank, there was something about it that was like, this is amazing.
Mhm.
Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah.
And that is not normal. Something else that you said that I thought was interesting was about control. And, it made my memory think of a saying in the big book about, if you control it, you don't enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, you don't control it. And that described me, because I never wanted to control, if I could have one or two, that was like total waste of time for me. So, if that's you listening, and once you start, you can't stop, that to me is a big piece of education that I had to learn coming into the rooms of recovery, that if I didn't put one in, I was okay. But if I put one in, it could take me anywhere, because I didn't know where the light switch was to turn it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when people come into recovery, say when you, were a mom, I mean, you still are a mom, but a mom who was about to the end of your rope as a drinker, an active drinker, what were some of those things to you that you were feeling and seeing in your world where you're like, this isn't good?
I was scared all the time for my kids. I didn't want to be that mom. I really, one of my goals in life was to not be like my parents, who had their issues around alcohol. And I could hear it. I could see it in myself becoming that. I was inconsistent with my parenting with them. It always bothered me. I always felt guilty, that I would be short-tempered, and high expectations. Perfectionism is really a big part of my story, and I would feel guilty about demanding and pressuring them, and then I would try to make up with it by spoiling them. And my anger, I was pissed off a lot.
Yeah.
In traffic, I was not a good driver. No, I wish I could have yelled out a speaker to people, get out of the way, you're in the wrong lane. I was always driving like that. It reminds me of once I had a client who we talked about driving, when you're newly sober, and she kept a notebook in her car called Driving Feelings. And she would just write down the feelings that she was coming across so she could just get them out, because driving drove her so nuts. Yeah, I was not a good driver either. And I knew the writing on the wall. I came from a family where there's alcoholism and violence and all the ugliness that goes along with that. And I was scared to death that was going to happen for my kids. It was really my kids who were my motivation. And so much so that in meetings, and I don't know if people hear so much now, but in recovery meetings early on, people would say, you have to do it for yourself or it's not going to work. And I was like, great, I hate myself, so I'm out of here. I just really, my self-esteem was really in the tanker. And then finally, a very close friend in recovery said to me, you're going to need more than one reason to be sober. Can't just be your kids. Can't just because you like yourself. Pick any of them. And there it was, it generalized over my life of the things and the goals I really wanted to accomplish. I really wanted go to school and get my master's. I really wanted to help people. I didn't know how to help people at first. I needed really good people to teach me how to help in a healthy way. Um, and then I was able to do that, and I was able to help other helpers, help people in healthy ways. Um, so all the things that I was so afraid of in the beginning, really, I wasted a lot of energy on that. And it was really when I learned how to surrender. I heard someone say recently, I'm an alcoholic in all my affairs. Once I learned how to surrender and throughout the day, in times when my emotion, I get that violent emotional twist, they call it. When I would get in the twist like that, when I learned how, to do 10 steps with people or to do that kind of reflection. Once I learned how to get that in my day, man, things just calmed down. I needed to learn how to calm down, how to self-soothe. I had no idea how to do that. From that spot, then my past came in perspective, and I was able to integrate a lot of that stuff. I got outside help for myself as a therapist as well, which is a really wise thing to do when you're doing that work, because your stuff's going to come up totally. So and there's a this is a complex disorder. It really is. So it's not just that I don't want to make it sound like it's just because that person's really a sensitive person. That's why there's mostly people are not alcoholics and addicts. There's a whole bunch of sensitive people in the world that learn how to process things and that learn, healthy ways of handling emotions. There's just something different, there's about us. There's a big piece of that I really believe in this is the alcoholic addict personality is low self-esteem, huge ego. The low self-esteem being that part of the shame and the humiliation, never knowing that you were worth much, all those things that go with low self-esteem. They're like at the iceberg down below, and maybe all you see is the ego on top, which is, hey, got this, I'm great, how are you doing? Know a lot of people, the bada bing bada boom thing. It's always like, yeah, I got this, and wanting, desperate for attention. I was desperate for attention, and that part. But equally parallel underneath is that low self-esteem part that really, what recovery does is give us a chance to get here. And I think that's what this book does, which I'm proud to be a part of, is it can give a mom, anybody who reads it really, but it can give that mom who is so afraid and ashamed that would never walk into a meeting. You can read the book, and it can give you just enough of an oomph of, I can maybe do this for one more day. That's really what we're just going for. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life. Just do it for today. And things will change. They may change, really slow. It's not going to be in your time. It's not going to be what you thought. Certainly my life is nothing of what I thought it was going to be, but it will. You just tighten your seatbelt, because it can be a fabulous ride. You will get to, there's a fellow I know who says, don't you want to know about yourself?
Yeah.
I want to know about me. Yeah. My favorite topic. I want to know more about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more you know, and this is what I think, to tie this back around at the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And so you can't fault yourself for not having the information. But when you realize that there are some patterns that you see that are repeating, some problems, maybe in relationships that keep surfacing, rather than pointing the finger outside of you and saying it's that person, it's that situation, it's this, if you could point it back to yourself and say, maybe there's something in me I could take a deeper look at and get some information, whether that's in the guise of a recovery meeting just to check it out, or reading the book Sober Moms, Happy Moms, or speaking with a therapist, and just really getting honest with yourself about some of your own patterns, then you really can learn and do better. And that's, to me, is the key of recovery is, when I know better, I do better, the old saying, right? And so now I know better. Now I understand. It's like, I like to equate it when I talk to my kids about alcoholism because it runs on both sides of their family. And I want them to be aware of the genetic component. I want them to be aware of the red flags to look for. But I dumb it down so simply that it would be like saying, you have a peanut allergy. And so you keep eating peanuts and you keep breaking out in a rash and you don't understand. And you go to the doctor and they say, oh, you're allergic to peanuts. Well, then are you going to go to Dairy Queen and order a peanut butter parfait and then curse the sundae? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to say, I'll have the hot fudge sundae and hold the peanuts, please. So, that's how simple it can be, is that when you see that there are patterns that are repeating and you can say, oh, these are issues that I have, they're in me. And so now alcohol is what makes me flare up. So I'm not going to put the substance in, but now I'm going to also deal with the other issues that go along with it.
Absolutely.
Then we can have a happy, joyous, and free life. I really do believe in the title that we chose for this, Sober Moms, Happy Moms, because who wants to be a sober mom and a miserable mom? Why get sober if you're going to be a crabby bitch? I could do that drunk.
Sort of safe.
I could do that drunk. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy my life. I want to appreciate the moments I have with my kids, which are fleeting.
Absolutely.
My middle daughter's graduating high school this week. And I have like one left at home. It goes by in a blink of an eye. So, if you're seeing patterns, this is the hope that from this podcast, my hope is that if you're hearing this and you're nodding your head and you're identifying with any of it, that you're saying, it's not outside of me. The problem isn't out there. If I rearrange these pieces of the puzzle, life will be better. If my kids would just take their nap, I wouldn't have to be so crabby. Maybe we could say, let me look a little deeper. And then that's where the real power comes from, when we stop blaming others. So thank you, Anne, for being part of the podcast today. So grateful for Anne. You can go to her website, Anne-Meese, MEESE.com. You can read her poem, Mother Grief. I highly recommend you read it. And you can get the full copy of it inside of our book, Sober Moms, Happy Moms, where each of us shares our story. And there are 11 other stories to read. And if you read them and you find that you're nodding your head in agreement and you've done some of the things, that's a great educational tool for you. And if you know someone who may be drinking too much, buy the book as a gift and share it with them. Give them some education, and if they're ready, they'll appreciate it. And if they're not ready, maybe they'll put it on their shelf and it'll resurface for them in a few years. That's happened to me, where people have given me books and I've stuck it on my shelf and years later it pops out and it's the perfect book at the perfect time. So we encourage you to check it out on Amazon. To find out more about publishing with us at O'Leary Publishing, you can go to o'learypublishing.com and download our free guide to publishing called The Influencer's Path to Successful Publishing. We thank you for being here today, and we wish you a happy, joyous, and free life.
Thank you. Grateful to be here.
So this has been another episode of the iBook podcast. I'm April O'Leary signing off. Be sure to hop on over to o'learypublishing.com to start your author adventure and see what writing a book could do for you in your profession, in your career, and what doors it might open. We thank our guests for being a part of the show today, and be sure to subscribe to podcasts here on YouTube. We look forward to serving you and helping you get your book out into the world.